I'm not sure how many days we were into the train-the-trainer training when I asked the trainers, I said, why'd you put this together? And they looked at me. Because, as Red said, a lot of times you'll ask a question and they don't give you a specific answer. They let you think it out. And in many cases, there is no wrong answer. But so I wanted to know, because like I said, I need black and white. So I said, you know, why did it develop recovery? Pretty simple. To enhance one's ability to care. And their belief is that the more of us that are recovery coaches, the more opportunity someone will have an opportunity to be saved. And it's pretty simple. Phil looked at me and just said, to enhance one's ability to care. You know, in many fields, people don't want to share what they know. And in this instance, CCAR is out there saying, we want to share what we know, we want to share what we've learned, and the more people that we can get out assisting in the recovery community, the better opportunity people will have to be saved.
They talk about staying in your lane. You're not a sponsor, and you're not a counselor. Recovery coach. Through the whole thing, what he was just saying about we would ask the question, they never one time ever gave us an answer. That's the same thing you do as a recovery coach. You're not there to give your coachee or whatever you call it the answers. Or your recovery, the answers, they figure them out for themselves. You're just kind of sitting there and you're not giving them advice. You're kind of letting them figure things out for themselves, because what do you got to do when you're in recovery? Pretty much you got to learn how to think all over again. Because most of the time, the addict, the drug was doing all the thinking for you. Then when you try to get clean, your family tried to do the thinking for you, and how often does that fall into their thing? What I learned, personally what I learned is you let them figure it out for themselves. So a lot of times, can I do the phrase? It's pretty much they're talking, and the only thing you really got to say to them is, how's that working for you?
There's 4 goals to a recovery coach that they taught us. Promoting recovery, removing barriers, connecting recoveries with recovery support services, and encouraging hope, optimism, and healthy living. That's what we do every day at City of Angels. Is there a word on there that you haven't heard before, or you haven't heard us use? What do we usually call the kids that come in here? Addicts.
Not recovery.
Right, addicts. Okay, thinking out of the box. Recovery. You won't hear us use the word addicts very much anymore as we move into this phase of City of Angels. Recovery. It's all about recovery. Actually, at the last Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, I said, you know, Riley Reagan had passed away and they were doing a resolution honoring him. I said, you really want to honor him? Why don't you change this to the Governor's Council on Recovery? You know, when is, you know, the Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse is supposed to be something positive. When is the word abuse ever positive? Right? So, we're going to see if we can do that. That's something that the members on the board said they're open to. That's how it started out, alcoholism and drug abuse, but it's really about recovery. It's not about what got them there, it's about where they're going. One of the things that they did do was they had a lot of insights. A lot of insights, and I would write them down. Every time I heard them say something that hit me, I would write it down. But this is one of the ones they said, a recovery coach should be open but not attached. That is hard. That is hard. Let me tell you. Like foul. I mean, how many of these? How many of these kids have gotten inside our hearts? You know. But
how can you not let that happen? I mean, you know.
Take attached in the sense of what Redneck was talking about. I mean, they still come into our hearts. But take it in what Redneck was talking about. Attached in the sense of enabling or doing the things that they need to do. Okay? It's one thing to give them the tools. It's another thing to pick up the tools and do the work. What's your recovery status? This is one of the things that we discuss in the program. I'm in recovery, I'm supporting someone in recovery, or I'm an ally of recovery. Those are the three statuses that they've kind of seen where everybody falls into.
Well, how many consider yourself in recovery?
Well, I have a question.
Because like in nar-non, we're codependents.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're in recovery from that.
Okay, how many are in recovery?
I'm in recovery,
Okay,
definitely.
you see? How many just support someone in recovery?
Always my hands
All
all
the
the
above. Yeah.
It's
Who's
like all
an
three
ally
apply
of
to me.
recovery?
Yeah.
All these categories pretty much sum it up as a parent of an addict. This is pretty much what you are. You're a recovery coach for your addict.
Sure.
And you also have to detach from them,
Yeah,
with love. And
Now I know why you smile so much at us. You see what
What
I'm
I
saying?
learned, what I started to talk about earlier from 12-step was someone was in recovery when they were not using alcohol or drugs. Okay? And what happens, like when we started out, what happens when someone uses? They get thrown out of a halfway house? Right?
They're out. They're out. Like they're back out.
We, as we built our alumni, we said if someone tests positive for drugs, they're out. It's like you get cast aside, okay? Because that's what we've been conditioned to believe what recovery is. What does CCAR say? Someone's in recovery when they say they are. As Red talked about earlier. You know, they talked about someone who's using 10 bags of heroin and they come in for help, or we run across them. And one of the things that you'll learn in recovery coach training is having a recovery work plan. And so they're using 10 bags of heroin, and they come back a week later and they're using 6. I would say they're not in recovery because they're still using. But what we learned up in recovery coach training is they may be working a program better than someone who hasn't used drugs in 10 years. Their recovery may be stronger than someone who hasn't used in 10 years. So that's a hard concept, that someone is in recovery when they say they are. So you guys are all familiar with SAMHSA down in Washington, D.C., which pretty much is the national agency on policy. So I raised my hand and I said, Phil, how does SAMHSA feel like about what you're teaching? They said they hate us.
Oh, that's interesting.
They hate us, they said.
I've seen people in NA and AA both, but shunned because they relapsed, or shunned because, so it's not so much always the person that's getting shunned, it's the people around that see this happening. So what happens is they're scared and they end up not coming back because of what they've seen. So now, we're not saying just to keep going out and getting high. What we're saying is show them something more positive. Show them something that nobody's going to put you out or down because you're not completely perfectly clean right now. That don't mean, this is falling for something for us. I'm not talking, sometimes families do a little different. But, I'm still learning on this. The recovery part is, I still think recovery is all about being clean and sober, but recovery is about what are you doing to change your life? What are you doing to break down the barriers in front of you for this,
Yeah,
And
because
who
what do
you
they
gotta
call
run
a dry drunk? Somebody can stop drinking but not be working a program and not be working on, the emotional part of it or the spiritual part of it, but it's going to keep them, make them healthier. Just for their own betterment.
If we have someone who comes in the City of Angels program and, we send them to treatment, they go to treatment, they come out, and they relapse and they're using again, or they're in a halfway house, and they're basically thrown out of the halfway house, or we tell them, you come back when you're not using. Are we removing an obstacle, or are we putting an obstacle in their place? Sure. Yep. Remember, what's the definition of a recovery coach? Someone who helps remove obstacles.
we want to find out, not so much a cure because there ain't none, but we want to find something that's going to help people out more. We want to stop losing a few of them through the cracks. And how can we do that? Some of them that are falling away are too ashamed and embarrassed when they relapse, so we never see them again.
And
You know,
what we learn in nar-non, when we relapse, you go.
And you know, I guess to a point, maybe part of me still believes that part. It's a little different, but they should be coming around people that understand what's going on. And how many of you parents, when this first started with your child, did you understand what's happening? You know, when you first came to City of Angels, did you understand what was going on? Do you still understand? Do you understand now?
The rules aren't going to change in a halfway house. But what is a recovery coach there for? To help remove barriers. When you sit with a recovery and you work out their recovery plan and their goals, if their goal is to get in a recovery house or a halfway house, sober house, and the rules are you can't use, what we're there is to help them get to that goal. So what do they have to do to get to that goal? And we remove the barriers to getting there. You know, they may be living at home. You know, they may be living at grandmom's house. You know, what we have to do is basically we're removing barriers and obstacles to help them live a healthier lifestyle. Sure, going from 10 bags of heroin down to 6, it's still better than the 10. You know? But you work with them to find out what their goals are, and then you help remove the obstacles to get to those goals. Redneck talked about it, we're going to see in a minute, about staying in your lane. Remember, we're not a recovery house. We're not a counselor. We're recovery coaches. So if their goal is to get in a recovery house, we have to understand what a recovery house is, what the rules are, what their contracts are, help work with the recovery so he understands them, and then help them meet that goal of getting there. Meeting the recovery where they're at. That's how they get help. If we say, don't come back to us until you're sober and clean, that's not meeting them where they're at. You know? Meet them where they're at, accept them where they're at, and then remove barriers and obstacles to help them get where they want to be. Help them understand where they want to be.
The scenario would be, you're sitting down with them and they're going, you know what, I still can't go home. My mom and dad, they still won't let me back in the house. I ain't shooting dope no more and I ain't taking pills, but I'm still smoking pot. And I showed up the other day with a dirty urine, so now I think I'm getting kicked out of my recovery house. You know, I just don't understand because marijuana, you know, it should be legal and it's a natural, it's grown in the ground. And you're looking at them and, you know, they're wanting you to tell them something, and this is the perfect example of, you know, how's that working for you? Okay, honestly, it sounds stupid, but then it stops them. It's almost like you punch them in the forehead because they're going to stop and think about it. And, okay, what's the reason why you might be getting kicked out of your sober house? What's the reason your parents won't let you back in the house? Okay, you're not shooting dope, but you're still smoking pot. And it gets them to start thinking. They might walk out of there and you might not only, that might be the only thing you say to make them think. Next time they come back in there, and it goes with what you just said about having a plan. If you're helping them make a plan, so how about trying not to smoke pot tomorrow? You know, and we're working it that way. But it's showing them, letting them answer their questions themselves. And when you got the right comments, it's like, it stuns you. Because it's like amazing when they sit there and they start, as they're talking, they start answering their own questions. It's about finding out where you're at. And I'm excited because it's more than just sitting there talking to somebody. It's, how they put it in their fancy words, it's just the listening part is, a lot of times you just need somebody to listen to and vent to. You know?
Yeah, because so often we're telling the recovery, we're speaking at them and telling them. When you ask them that question, how's that working for you? They've got to answer it. Well, I'm thrown out of my house, I'm thrown out of my recovery house, my girlfriend left me, my parents aren't speaking to me, they took my phone, they took my car, they took my phone. You know?
How's that working for you?
Red lights and yellow lights.
Along with what we just talked about, Red had mentioned before, stay in your lane. We're not nar-non, right? We're not a sober house. Recovery coaches are not sponsors, they're not counselors, they're not nurses or doctors, they're not clergy people. We don't have to go by their rules, nor should we advise as if we were. We're a recovery coach that's working to remove barriers so they can live a healthier lifestyle.
Listening and bringing yourself to where they're at. Not where we want them to be or where we think they should be. You know, sit down with them where they're at that moment. And watch it, you know, we get a lot further.